she worked for that defense contractor, as you did in real life. What did she see? What about 9/11 helped wake her up and set her on this path?
That the blueprints to Building 7 were in her facility and it was wired for demolition. And like I said, this character is very strongly based on me, and I've been warned by lawyers not to talk about it being me.
Hey friends, welcome back. Hey, I'm very excited to have on the line a good friend of James Perloff's. She's an author, an all-around great gal. Her name's Rachael McIntosh, and she has a book series called Security Through Absurdity. And boy, is she smart. I got to tell you guys, the first time I talked to Rachael, the Comcast problems I was having with my internet made it impossible. Rachael, I think our call dropped, 8, 9, 10 times we had to reconnect, and finally...
Yeah, at least 10.
Yeah, and then we had to finally throw in the towel. That was in early July, and we've rescheduled now. And Rachael, I'm so happy to have you back. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's my absolute pleasure. Your book series, Security Through Absurdity, was voted Best New Series of 2014 on Goodreads.com, so congratulations there. Why don't you tell everybody just a little bit about your book series and why and how you woke up to this national security state, which is a farce?
Well, I went to art school. I'm an artist. But because I had to get a real job, I ended up working as a temp at a defense contractor, and then got quickly hired to be there. And kept getting promoted to be in charge of marketing communications. And by the time I left, I was in charge of 5 different divisions marketing communications going out of the house. So I was writing press releases that would end up on the news. I was doing a lot of proposal work for building multi-million-dollar contracts I had to oversee. And it started off as just like typing and copying and everything. And then it turned into this thing, and I realized this isn't what I want. So the first book was all about working for that defense contractor. And I was there during 9/11, and I was during the lead up to the Iraq War. And I document in the only way I know how, which would be fictional, so that I don't get thrown in jail or anything like that. But that book contains a lot of things about September 11th that I personally witnessed, and it's communicated through my character, fictional character, Jocelyn McLaren. Then the second book is called Bubbles Will Pop, and that's when the character Jocelyn leaves that job at the defense contractor, and she has twins and she has babies, and the father of those babies actually worked as a mercenary for the defense contractor, and he's having all sorts of post-traumatic stress problems, and she's realizing that what she was doing working for the defense contractor is helping shift the public's opinion about going to war. So she throws her television out, and she's dealing with MS, and she's dealing with twins, and she's dealing with a guy with post-traumatic stress. And so it's makes perfect fiction, right? It's great. So then the last book is when the character gets involved with politics, because she wants to fix everything that she saw going wrong at the defense contractor. And she wants to fix everything going wrong with the economy and with the foreign policy that she's seeing, right? She has children, and she never realized that the United States had that much debt. So the main character gets elected to be a delegate for Ray Pierce. Ray Pierce is based on Ron Paul. Right. And in real life, I was a delegate for Ron Paul. I was an alternate delegate. And I got elected to go represent Rhode Island at the RNC in 2012. And when I got there, I should have known it. But everything that happened there was a completely made-for-TV event. And it blew my mind. And that's when I came home and I just started writing. I needed to document everything that I saw. And like I said, I did it through this fictional character, Jocelyn.
Yeah. Well, you and I both know well how the mainstream Mockingbird media colluded with the Republican National Committee to steal the election from Ron Paul, who had more support from active military members than all other Republican candidates combined. He got more donations from active military. And of course, the grassroots support was very, very real and very, very inspiring. It's kind of like what we're seeing with Trump, to the degree that we know Hillary has no real support. And we know that the DNC colluded with Hillary to steal the election and delegates from Bernie. Bernie said she was unfit for office, and then he turns around and endorses her. It's the most bitter pill I can imagine anyone having to swallow, as now this national security state, this fascism, is playing out on the world stage, and anybody with two brain cells to rub together can see it. This is pure fascism, isn't it, Rachel?
Well, basically it's completely fixed. It's all made for TV, and I'm to the point where, when I first came home in 2012, I tried to tell people about some of the stuff that I witnessed, mainly that our bus got hijacked, so we couldn't make the rules committee meeting, and we couldn't object to the rules change. All the Ron Paul buses, they couldn't get to the meeting on time. And when I told people that, like, oh, it's just politics. But on top of it, there was a hurricane that happened but wasn't even really a hurricane. And then I got home and I started looking into, like, well, what the heck with this hurricane thing? And it turned out that the Weather Channel was behind the media hype about this hurricane and why the RNC had to shut down the convention for this hurricane. And it turns out the Weather Channel is owned by Bain Capital. And if you recall from last election, that Romney was a big kahuna at Bain Capital. So that's why James Perloff, when he read my book, he ended up having this like wake up call. Like, he was obviously already woken up, but he had this thing about, well, why would anybody want to? What's the deal with weather? And I said, well, Enron was the first to deal with weather derivatives, and their records were housed in Building 7. And of course that blew, whatever it did, it fell down, blew up, evaporated. And that was the first time he had ever heard of weather derivatives. And so he looked further into this, and he found out that the Rothschilds have a big ownership of weather and public perception of weather.
We are the #1 provider of broadcast weather graphic solutions in the country. I mean, you had this downpour, I believe, in the last 24 hours, which has caused even people losing their lives, and situations like this. With the detail that we can put up through the technology that we give to the various weather stations, this makes people more aware of it.
They own another, I guess it's a European-Australian, I think it's Australian, weather type of thing that does weather stuff that gets put on the news. And they can get people to, like, say, oh, it's going to be a flash flood at a certain time, so people won't go out of their house, or they can do things like that. So that's what he's all about. And he was very kind how he did some interviews about how my book inspired him to research that.
Yeah, and his article, Are the Rothschild Elite Banking on the Weather, is a must-read. So I'll put that article up here as we're talking, because as we know, the Rothschilds also control Reuters and AP, so they can shape public perception. They can shape the news. It really is a world stage in the sense that we're being sold fiction by the banking elite. Rachel, I've been saying for a long time, and I'm going to continue saying it, at this point in history, it's humanity versus the banksters. And what's really got me upset lately is listening to fanboys like Mark Maron and others with successful podcasts continuing to praise Hillary Clinton with essentially what is I'm calling political monotheism, with Hillary as their god. And what I don't understand is how people like this can continue to talk about how terrible it would be if Trump became president, and that the only choice is Hillary, when her crimes are so epic and so profound that she should be in prison. I mean, it's documentable. Anybody who's going to be intellectually honest knows that she's unfit to be back in the White House. God forbid she gets back in the White House. Does that type of demagoguery bother you as much as it bothers me? Because she's a hardcore criminal, and I guess the point here is that she benefited from a $100,000 per head fundraiser by the Rothschilds. So she's actually Rothschild's pick for president.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, of course it bothers me, but the thing is, once you kind of come to grips that this whole thing is like their stage, and it's up to them to put on this show to make people believe they're like shape-shifting reality around people. And I think this is the election where people are finally saying, you know what? I don't like either one of these candidates. And the Trump, the belief in Trump is just as blind to what's going on in front of them as the belief in Clinton. And I think that's why they put the two of them together. I mean, Trump's literally, people can vote for Trump, and it was a good protest vote against Hillary Clinton. They could do whatever they want, quite frankly, because it's already settled. And as far as I'm concerned, and I've been saying this for a long time, and I'm going to make a call. This is what I think is going to happen based on just what I've been watching. I think Hillary's going to win by a margin of 3 to 5%. I think Trump is going to sue, because that's what he does best. He sues people, and that's how he makes money. And then that lawsuit is going to jam everybody up while they have the reset of the whole global reset of the finances that's going on. Meanwhile, while Hillary's been elected, she'll put in the Supreme Court justices and all the cabinet positions, and that's what I see as the plan being.
Yeah.
Because it really all comes down to this money, this monetary reset that's got to happen.
Yeah, that's what I'm worried about too. I think the economic collapse is baked in the cake. Again, if we look at the Rothschilds, their Economist magazine from 1988 predicted a global currency, a world currency by 2018. We're at 2016 and a half here, so we wonder if they're going to get what they want. I talked to many financial and economic experts, though, and a lot of people think that they have lost control globally as we see China moving towards gold, Russia moving towards gold. So we'll see how this thing plays out. But what I want Democrats to understand, hardcore liberals like Mark Maron to understand, they need to understand that Hillary is literally Rothschild's pick for president. And who are the Rothschilds? It was, I think, Mother Rothschild once said, if my sons didn't want war, there would be no wars. I mean, they financed every single war this nation has ever been in.
That's right.
And they control the Federal Reserve along with their Rockefeller friends. So it needs to be said that political monotheists with Hillary as their god, people like Mark Maron, need to wake the hell up, because I'm sick and tired of them using their broadcast preaching about how awesome Hillary is. It's absolutely mental illness, I think, at this point, and I just want to call them out. I think I might have to do a special...
it's true. I mean, honestly, the whole thing with the DNC leaks, with the emails that came out, like 20,000 emails came out, and somehow, after that happened, Hillary Clinton is going up in the polls.
Well, that's because, did you hear this? Reuters is now tweaking the way they crunch their numbers, right?
Yeah.
And who's Reuters? Reuters is Rothschild. I mean, it's absolute absurdity.
And then the pictures of Donald Trump's wife came out, and they're just hitting us back, and they're just slapping us around. They're keeping us crazy so that we don't see the actual content of the emails, which have to do with uranium deals. I think that it was Ben Swan did a very, very excellent piece on that the other night, how
uranium
deal that the Clinton Foundation did, and she did as Secretary of State with the Russian company.
Yeah, well, that's right. And I've interviewed Charles Ortel, who has done the research on the Clinton Foundation, and he's gone on the record saying there's billions of dollars in fraud here, billions of dollars from Haiti alone, right? That the Clintons have stolen from the Haitian people who they were supposed to help. These people are absolute sociopaths. And
I know they're literally eating dirt in Haiti.
No, it's so sad, and it's so sick that these people can sleep at night knowing what they've done. But that's because they're devoid of empathy. They're devoid of remorse. They lack the gene that makes them human. And that's the scariest damn thing. Getting her in the White House when we know she's a puppet of Rothschild it's literally the doom for America. Do people honestly think she's not going to come after the guns? Do they think that she's not going to use the IRS and other agencies to come after truth tellers? Do you think she's not going to crack down on the alt media? Do you think she won't be a maniacal dictator? She's demonstrated who she is throughout her life. And in fact, I want to play this clip from a great video on YouTube called Hillary Clinton, a Top 10 Breakdown. This recounts her top 10 scandals, and I just want to play the first so everyone understands exactly who this woman is and was from the start.
And her actions as a young attorney may have set the tone for her career. The 27-year-old Clinton was fired from the staff of the House Judiciary Committee investigating the Watergate scandal in 1974. She was fired by her supervisor, lifelong Democrat Jerry Zeifman, who called her a liar. and much worse. She was an unethical, dishonest lawyer, he said. She conspired to violate the Constitution, the rules of the House, the rules of the committee, and the rules of confidentiality. Zeifman also refused to give Clinton a letter of recommendation, making her one of only 3 employees he snubbed during his 17-year career.
Rachel, I just wanted to play that for you because I think it really is important that people understand, especially those that support this woman, because she's a woman. My God, who cares? I've said in other interviews, I couldn't care if there was a green alien from Neptune in the White House as long as they respected the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, and the rule of law. This woman does not, and she never has, not from day one. And, who's her hero? Saul Alinsky, Rules for Radicals. This is not a good human being. And she's on the way to the White House. Let me ask you this. Did you see at the DNC that piece of video from Josh Fox, the director of Gasland, showing how empty that arena was when she was about to give her speech? The Bernie people got so pissed off that they left.
This is amazing. Like, this place is half empty all of a sudden. I can't believe my eyes. Like, I've never seen anything like this. This is the prime time of the Democratic National Convention, right after the nomination of Hillary Clinton, and this place is emptied out like crazy. This has got to be something really worrisome for the Democrats. Voter enthusiasm wins elections.
So, I mean, not even
They should have.
half the
See,
Democrats
the thing with the
hate
Bernie people is that this time around, and I'm glad that this happened. I'm very glad this happened because it wasn't visible with the Ron Paul people. Now it's visible with the Bernie people. They walked out. Some people, the Ron Paul people, did walk out. I believe the main delegation walked out, but it wasn't, nobody cared. Nobody saw it. This sort of maybe saw it on TV, but there was no denying that this Bernie thing happened. And I'm very, very happy that this did happen because this is the year that America is seeing that this whole thing it's a pre-planned event.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what you do when you vote. It really doesn't matter.
Well, let me ask you this, though. We know that Hillary has received somewhere in the neighborhood of $45 to $50 million in hedge fund Wall Street donations this year compared to Trump getting, I think, $19,000. That was reported by Zero Hedge.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
Here's my question. As it relates to this whole thing being fixed, it seems to me that the Zionist establishment, Rothschild loves Hillary, Zionists love Hillary. The Zionist establishment is afraid of a Trump presidency. And so for those of us who understand what a hardcore criminal Clinton is, you do tend to draw the conclusion that anyone's better than her, so Trump's better. And why is the RNC now aligning against Trump? They still want him out of there. They still don't want him to be candidate for president.
There was a hit, I believe it was on USA Today. They started their whole day off with their concocting plans. What if Trump was forced to drop out right now? Their number one concern is Trump still owes them money. He's on the hook for $1 billion with the RNC.
How so?
When he became presumptive nominee, which I did a blog post about this, and I'll send it to you. I forget the date when it came out of the news, like, oh, he's our presumptive nominee. It was before California and a couple other states had their primaries. And I was like, well, how did that happen? What he did is he did a deal just like Romney did in 2012, where they had Team Romney, which is a hybrid new corporation of the Romney lawyers and the RNC. They set up a new corporation that was all about gaining money. And they would have Romney write letters, to vote for this candidate and all this other stuff. And he was collecting money, and he would pay himself back from the money collected, but it would also go to the RNC. So Trump did the exact same thing, but on steroids. And he told the RNC, look, I will get you $1 billion. And that's sort of, okay, you're the presumptive nominee. So right now they're thinking about, well, he's got to just shut his mouth. Somebody actually told him, you could have taken a vacation last 2 weeks and done better than Clinton if you had just shut up. He literally could, if he just shut up. He's burning his own bed right now. It's crazy. But they're thinking about what would happen if they forced him to quit. But they can't because they're on the hook for so much money.
Well, I think that the establishment fears a Trump presidency just because he's willing to talk to Putin. Whereas, okay, here's the thing. If Hillary Clinton becomes president, we get more of the same. more
Well, yeah.
endless
And
unconstitutional
honestly,
wars of
and
imperialism.
I know I know you're not pro Clinton, obviously, and neither am I.
Well, I hate her
But
guts.
it's going to be much easier for the American public to just deal with whatever is going to roll down this pike with this money stuff. And I talk about that in that third book. There, and it's all about, I don't know if I don't think it's going to be Bitcoin per se, but it's going to be something like Bitcoin, where it's not going to be tangible. They're probably not even going to try to print it anymore. It's going to be money that's going to be issued to people. And people are going to, and then I talk about the dark money that's holding up the US economy right now, that nobody knows where it comes from, and where it actually, they do know where it comes from. It comes from dark projects that were started when they started marketing the American dream of owning a home. And so HUD was used, which is a cabinet position, to basically launder money for the CIA after World War II. They needed to fund their own projects because it couldn't show up on the books. And they got in business with the Japanese and the Germans, and they were, doing drug running and slave trade and all sorts of things. And they didn't have to claim taxes, obviously. And so these budgets started growing. They had to figure out some way to get it back into our economy. So they said, okay, HUD, let's do the American dream. Everybody get a mortgage. So through the banking system, which, like you've pointed out, is Rothschild controlled, they would launder that money. Now that money is basically propping up the U.S. economy. There's dark money. And every time somebody uses money, actual cash, they're laundering money.
Mm. Well, you're actually singing Catherine Austin Fitts' song. I think she talks specifically.
I love her. She's fantastic.
Yeah, she woke up to all of this and the dark pools and the trillions, literally more than $8 trillion missing from the Pentagon by their own admission. And, that money doesn't just actually disappear down a black hole. It's being used. And her thesis, along with Joseph P. Farrell, is that perhaps it is being used by the deep state. It's being used by the breakaway civilization that they talk about to potentially go off world. Now that gets into a whole different.
That's a whole
different conversation.
So because the next book in my series happens in Argentina, and that is where a lot of those, the rocket scientists, you always hear about them, but then there's this other branch of science that was happening at the time,
Operation
Paperclip interdimensional
Nazis.
And all this stuff. So that happens in my next book when Jocelyn, the main character, finds herself in there.
Yeah. Well, look, I want to ask you this about Bubbles Will Pop, because you mentioned the collapse that's coming, and you're 100% right, it is coming. But I've spoken with Mitch Firestein and, of course, the work of Willem Middelkoop. Both those gentlemen agree that probably what's going to happen is that China may, in the near future, come out with a gold-backed currency, or a currency that's backed by a basket of commodities that might include oil and silver and gold and copper. The bottom line here, though, Rachel, is that bubbles will pop, and this petrodollar bubble is going to pop. And what I'm trying to do, and have been trying to do for a very long time, is warn people that they need to prepare for the death of the dollar, because it will be hell on earth to have to live like Venezuelans are currently living. The hyperinflationary scenario, the death of our currency, it's going to just absolutely destroy people.
Yeah, and what's going to end up happening is when the government entitlements like Social Security and disability and things like that get shut off, that's going to, you don't even have to have the death of the dollar yet. It's just going to, that in itself is going to, that's going to tear everything apart.
Yeah, the inner cities will burn once those food stamp cards, EBT cards.
The EBT cards, or even the Social Security checks.
Yeah, no, it's very, very sad. And again, Hillary's Rothschild's pick. I can't say it enough. I'm going to scream it from the rooftops from here until the election, because anybody that votes for Hillary is by virtue backing every unconstitutional war of aggression and the death of millions, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of innocents in these recent wars, and frankly going all the way back to World War I and before. Rothschild blood will be on your hands if that woman gets into office, and everybody listening to this needs to understand their culpability if they support that criminal named Hillary Rotten Clinton. All right, so let me ask you this.
Can I ask you something?
Sure.
what do you feel about actually voting your conscience?
Well, you know what? I I think everybody should do whatever their conscience dictates. My thing is going to be trying to wake up the liberals to who she is, because I cannot believe that the FBI won't indict her. I cannot. Well, of course I can, because
I was gonna
Obama,
say,
the puppet
yeah,
in chief, Obama, is her buddy, and Loretta Lynch was put into power by him. And the FBI isn't going to do squat. The FBI, as you know, covered up a lot of the false flag stuff going on 9/11. So the FBI is very good at concealing the truth, aren't they?
Yes.
All right. Well, let's
And
talk.
that's why I've come to appreciate the people that years ago I'd be like, who are these people that used to write in crazy candidates? Because in Rhode Island where I live, the Providence Journal, they always put in the write-in votes. They always put it in the paper, and I was like, who are these people that write in? These crazy people. Now I totally understand. Or the people that write, "I do not consent." I was like, who are these people that write, "I do not consent"? Maybe those people kind of got wind of this well before I did. That this whole thing is it's just a show. What's going to happen is going to happen. It's all based on the money. And that's why I love being on this show because your show is all about the money. So I'm really excited about this.
Well, I'm excited to have you on because we're like-minded kindred spirits. We both loved Ron Paul. We both saw that. I think, and I said at the time, this is our last best chance to get the Republic back, and because he was an honest man, and all you had to do was look at his voting record. Whereas, you want to know who Hillary Clinton is? Just look at her history. Look at the scandals. Look at the Clinton body count.
If you can, because everything's blocked out by our own government.
Yeah, well, and I wanted to mention this too. I've mentioned it before, but do people even realize that this government has given itself the ability to distribute propaganda domestically? The U.S. repealed the propaganda ban and is now spreading government-made news to Americans. This was news from foreignpolicy.com in 2013. So think of all the false flags that have happened since 2013. For instance, the Orlando Pulse nightclub shooting.
There's an actual transcript, and then there's a summary of the rest. Here's what's news in the summary. Nobody died until 5:13 in the morning when the SWAT team entered. Prior to that, no one had been killed. The 53 that were injured and the 49 that were murdered all met their fates at the time of and during the police entry into the building.
Yeah.
Who's to say that's not an entirely manufactured piece of propaganda to turn public opinion against the Second Amendment and gun ownership? Because they've given themselves the blanket authority to use propaganda against the people. So who's to say what that propaganda is? Could that propaganda be entire events? Certainly we know it's government manufactured news and stories and articles parroted by mockingbirds locally and nationally, but perhaps it also includes events. And it's very, very, very disturbing because this is Big Brother on steroids. When the government can do this to its own people and wants to and is willing to, this is, Orwell couldn't have dreamt of anything as nightmarish.
What's interesting? I was just in Argentina because I said that my next book's going to happen in Argentina. So I wanted to go get the lay of the land. And I realized that and I spoke to a friend of mine in Great Britain recently, and I realized that people from other countries, they don't have the same feeling about government in general. The United States has been very, very lucky. Very blessed with the Constitution it has, with everything that we've had as far as our productivity, and it's just been awesome. But we have this idea that elected people are good people, and other countries, especially a place like Argentina that got devastated, they really have no feelings at all that anybody that even looks to be in government is a good person.
Yeah, well, I think people here are waking up to the fact. What is Congress's approval rate? 7%?
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
People hate these elected monsters because they go to Washington and then they change. And I'm going to give you a firsthand example of that. There is a woman named Judy Chu, who's a Democrat, and Zero Hedge reported on this. The article was, "Something strange emerges when looking at a congresswoman's day trading records." Miss Chu, somehow miraculously, over 5 years being in Congress, her net worth went from $0 to $3.47 million through day trading. puts, options, very complicated trades that most people don't know how to do. And, Congress has blanketed itself. They can trade on insider information. So these people go to Washington and they change. They become part of this fascist system. That's why we can't take our nation back.
Can I say something?
Please, yeah.
All right.
That's why you're here.
I'm right in the middle of writing a blog post about this whole vote thing, the DNC leaks and everything. And I'm realizing that I was not surprised by anything with the DNC leaks as far as the content of them, because not that I read all of them, but that the content of them being like so backstabby and everything else. Because I went to the political training seminar that Ron Paul had put together when he did the Rally for the Republic, which was the counter RNC before was the 2008 election. So I went to political training. And at that, Ron Paul came up first. He had his yellow Oxford shirt on, and he gave us all a speech. And everybody was really excited because we're right there with him, and we all love him. And he gave a speech that he knows that we're passionate about liberty and we're passionate about everything that he talks about. However, nothing's going to happen unless you take this as a war. And everybody's like, huh? And he goes, some of you people will not be able to do this. And that's okay. You'll have other gifts to give to the world, to bring liberty to the masses. But you have to be a warrior. And I don't like to do this. And that's why I put together this seminar. And I brought these people in here to teach you to go be warriors. And it's not pretty. And then we listened for 2 days straight with lobbyists and political type people to tell us how to backstab and basically do everything that the RNC leaks email was talking about. And that, when I was taking copious notes, and I was just I came home and all the Ron Paul meetup was there to we had a meeting about it to go over the notes and what we were going to do. And people are just, I don't want to do that. They just didn't want to do it. And in fact, while I was there at that political training, I forget who it was or what state it was, but John Tate, he was introducing the Campaign for Liberty at that point. He stood up and he was trying to rile people up or get people involved or do something. And somebody said, how are we actually going to, why would we do this? And it turned, they had to shut down the meeting.
Well, let's be clear here. I think Ron Paul, being a pragmatist, was trying to let people understand that you have to play the game the way they play the game in Washington, because they're going to lie, cheat, and steal. They're going to use lobbyists. They're going to use the mechanics of Washington to further their globalist ends. We would have to do the same thing to further our libertarian or constitutional ends. And
that's exactly that's what all about,
Yeah, and the point is that, and I've said this before, it's much easier to destroy a building than build one. It's much easier to chop a tree down than grow one. It takes 100 years to grow a beautiful oak. You could chop it down in an afternoon. And that's what these globalists, these New World Order, Rothschild, Zionist monsters are good at. They're very good at burning things down. They're going to burn down the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. They're going to burn down this nation. They're going to burn down our paper fiat dollars. They're going to burn the whole thing down because that's easy. And when that happens, they'll have total control. So I have empathy for Ron Paul, because here he tried to be an honest man, and was an honest man, working within this corrupt system for decades. And what an honorable guy. Again, look at his voting record. People don't.
I love that he didn't come out and endorse Romney. That's the one thing.
Yeah.
It was all right, good. And that's the other thing. He said that you have all these there's political parties galore here in the United States. Vote your conscience, because that's what the Constitution is supposed to. That's what keeps it real. Is when people think to themselves, and well, this would be a good thing to do, or this probably isn't a good thing to do, and that's what keeps it real. And if people aren't doing that, even if they're going to vote for the lesser of two evils, like some sort of South Park shit sandwich thing, I don't think people should do that. I mean, I guess you have to. I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know who I'm going to vote for, and I don't even know if I'm going to vote.
Well, I don't think.
But I honestly do not think, no matter who anybody votes for in this election, that it's going to do anything. It's not going to do anything, because the plans are already in place. And people have to, like you were talking about, you have to shore yourself up with your finances or whatever you have to do. You have to be right with your family, your friends, and the neighborhood around you. That's how I look at it.
Well, I just want to say one last thing, though, as it pertains to this woman who is, I think, one of the most ghastly, beastly human beings on the planet. Her name's Hillary Clinton. She reports to the CFR. She gushes over the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds. There's video of her saying, "Oh, I'm so glad there's a branch now here of the CFR in Washington, because now I won't have to go so far to find out what my orders are and what we should be doing." Trump's not CFR. So
Yeah.
I just think at the end of the day, we have to keep this woman out of the White House or she's going to burn this country down, except for the fact that I think they're going to steal it. They're going to steal this election electronically or otherwise.
Yeah, they can do whatever they want.
So that's the scariest part. All right, well, let's do this as we wrap up. Your books are about security through absurdity. Of course, the most absurd thing is the 9/11 false flag, which really kicked off this entire police state apparatus, this Big Brother Orwellian NSA, security at any cost, to hell with your liberties, we're going to make you secure, just listen to us and trust us. How did your character wake up in the book? She worked for that defense contractor, as you did in real life. What did she see? What about 9/11 helped wake her up and set her on this path?
That the blueprints to Building 7 were in her facility, and it was wired for demolition. In the book, she was, and like I said, this character is very strongly based on me, and I've been warned by lawyers not to talk about it being me, but I want everybody to know that the initials of everybody in the books are the initials of the same people in real life. And my LinkedIn profile is up there if people want to go see where I actually work. Sure, go for it. She saw interaction with New York City's mayor with that. She also saw interaction before that. She was kind of waking up to the fact, what did Oklahoma City have to do with it? And the thing with these books, especially that first book, it's very slow because Jocelyn doesn't know anything. She's an artist, so that she really wants to do a good job, and she's trying to fit into this very bizarre environment, which is a combination of military and corporate land, and everything's beige, and she really is trying hard to like please everybody, because also it turns out that she's got other issues, make her more interesting character, like kind of a codependent personality. So she's trying really hard to make things right, and she ends up forging a signature of a king to get a contract through, which made me very scared when I saw the Malaysian Airlines disappearing. I'll just leave it at that. And then the other thing that she sees and kind of woke her up to some things was that her press releases were showing up on the news, and she's like, "I'm an art student. Why is my stuff?" And the whole point was to get the stock prices up at the place that she worked for. That was her number one job, was to get the stock prices to go up. And so that had a lot to do with PR. And that's why when I finally did get to the RNC in 2012, I shouldn't have been as shocked as I was that everything was made for TV to get a PR thing happening in people's mind.
I got goosebumps here. Yeah, it's funny, we get to the end of the interview, and the most blockbuster part of the interview is what your character saw with plans for a demolition of World Trade Center 7. World Trade Center 7, as all of these listeners know, but our friends, neighbors, and colleagues, the sheeple people, have no idea that there was a third building that blew up that day and fell at freefall speed, in this case at 5:25 in the afternoon, and the BBC reported about the collapse of that building early, which is impossible. Let's just revisit that. What did your character see in regards to blueprints and the demolition of World Trade Center 7? Can you just flesh that out a little bit? Because it is the smoking gun of 9/11.
What happened was there was a big meeting. And when there's big marketing meetings, like the whole place goes on sort of like everybody takes the stuff off their desk and everything looks nice. So if people walk through, it looks like everybody's working hard. And we had this big meeting with a company called plan graphics. And they had the blueprints for most of the buildings in New York City because they were doing three-dimensional renderings of the buildings. And three-dimensional renderings we were trying to buy that company. And here I am, I'm talking about the character in my own first person, but this is Jocelyn's world I'm talking about. And they're trying to buy the company, and the point being that the three-dimensional renderings at that point seemed really high tech, and we thought it would be a really good thing for first responders to have when they're going into a building, to know that there's an electrical line or a gas line or something that they could maybe bump into, and that's when she realizes there's something in that building. Now, interestingly, there was a big part of this book that was focused on that information. The first publisher of this book, they edited it out, and I kept it out for it's very short now, this 9/11 day. Actually, it's not very short. It's a good almost 30 pages of like what's happening. But the part about the building being wired, that is out of the book because of the very first publishers. They said, nah, it makes it too conspiracy theory. We're not going to do it. And you shouldn't do that. I was like, oh, okay. So we got it all done up, and they were the ones that had me break it into 3 books, because I just wrote it in one giant fell swoop. I got home from the RNC and I just wrote every night. I put my kids to bed and I wrote every night till like 2 a.m, and I handed it into the publisher, and they said, well, you got to chop that up. This is a huge book. Let's turn it into 3 books. So then it took like about another 9 months to parse out the parts and turn it into 3 standalone novels. And then on September 11th, the year that it finally came out, my first book was not available on Amazon. And I was like, what are you talking about? We just did all this marketing to get everybody all excited about this book for September 11th, and it's not even on Amazon. And so then I could talk to the publisher. They said it's Amazon's fault. Amazon said it was the publisher's fault. Nothing was happening. I said, you know what? You guys kind of suck. So I took the 28 pages that had to do with 9/11, and I published it myself for 99 cents on Amazon. And within 24 hours, I sold 2,000 copies. And I said, you know what? You guys really do suck. And I broke my contract, and now everything's self-published for myself on Entropy Press, which is my press.
Oh, good for you. Well, guys, you can see why I like Rachael. I mean, after that first interview that we had, in which we were kicked off Skype no less than a dozen times, I swear, I definitely wanted to get her back, and we've been very fortunate this time around. We didn't get kicked off Skype once, did we, Rachael? This worked out.
No.
This worked out pretty well. Can you remind people the names of the books and how to get them? Because we'd love to support you.
Oh, thank you. I want to let people know, too, that these books, I knew it was important that people consume these truth bombs that I'm throwing at people. So I made them kind of funny. So as you're going through, you're reading this story about this female, and you're going to giggle at some parts, and other parts you're going to scratch your chin and be like, did that really happen? You can get my books at my website at rachellmcintosh.com, RACHAEL, with another L. There's 2 L's. Rachael L. McIntosh, MCINTOSH.com. If that's too tricky, go to Amazon. I don't get as much money at Amazon, but you can go to Amazon and look for me, Rachael L. McIntosh, and all my books will be there. The first one is Little Yellow Stickies. The next one is Bubbles Will Pop. And the third one is The Big Show.
Excellent. And how about
I hope you'll like them. I really do. People that get these books, like cognitively get the books, they love them. And in fact, I'm going to be publishing all 3 of these as one chunk as I originally wrote it.
Okay.
So that'll be another one on Amazon.
Good.
And the 4th book, which should be out by the end of the year.
Well, guys, you know what? Support Rachael. Rachael, we have very, very awesome listeners and just a wonderful audience of very, very smart, like-minded people. And please do buy Rachael's books. Let's support great people with great minds, like-minded people who actually give a damn about taking our nation back from the Rothschild bankers who seek to destroy it. Our guest has been Rachael McIntosh. Rachael, thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
My pleasure. And guys, thank you so much for tuning in. We very, very much appreciate your support at sgtreport.com. thelibertymill.com, and thephaser.com. Real news, truthful news, 24/7. God bless and have a wonderful week ahead. Bye-bye.